Greetings, friends. My name is Pavos Telmach, and now we'll unveil the top news of recent days. The European Commission recommends starting negotiations on Ukraine's accession into the European Union. This was announced by the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. According to her, today's decision is historic. She emphasized that Ukraine continues to fight against Russian aggression, but carries out reforms in the country even during the war. The official said that during her visit to Kyiv last weekend, she was convinced that Ukraine has taken 90% of the necessary steps for further European integration. It is about judicial reform, anti-corruption programs, and de-oligarchization. And Josep Borrell, High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, wrote on social network X that Ukraine belongs to the European family. This is already a fact. Today, Ukraine makes another key step on its path towards the EU. We will continue working together towards Ukraine's future membership.
Ukraine belongs to our European family. This is already a fact. And today, Ukraine has made another key step on its path towards the European Union. Today, the European Commission has recommended the opening of accession negotiations with Ukraine. In fact, the Ukrainian people decided on the European choice 10 years ago. It was during the Maidan Revolution, a choice that they have paid with their life, resisting Russia's brutal war of aggression, and happily they continue paying. Today's decision is a clear recognition of Ukraine's relentless reform efforts and a strong political will despite the tragic circumstances. It acknowledges the strong resilience and resolve of the Ukrainian society. Today's recommendation has launched a process that will make Europe safer and more prosperous. It may be a short path, but Ukraine will not walk alone. We will continue to pursue it jointly. The European Union is and will remain on Ukrainian side. We will work together towards Ukraine's future membership of the European Union because Ukraine belongs to the European family.
The recommendation on Ukraine is an important milestone on Kyiv's road to Western integration and a geopolitical gambit for the West, as the country has been fighting against Russia's invasion since February 2022. The Commission's decision, which has to be ratified by prime ministers at a summit in December, could eventually lead to the biggest expansion of the bloc since 2004, when 10 countries joined the EU, including Poland, the Czech Republic, the Baltic states and Hungary. Ukraine has already planned our next steps. We are fully aware that EU membership relies on a political decision shared by all EU members that want to see a new state join, but it also relies on the candidate state itself, and it works to approximate and adapt EU standards and community norms. Ukraine will join the EU, and we will achieve this in particular as a result of our state's internal transformation that is completely consistent with the interests of our people.
This is a pure positive. Despite all the difficulties, we are moving forward. Already in December, we expect a political decision from the European Council. Ukrainians have always been and remain part of our common European family. Our country must be in the European Union. Ukrainians deserve it both for their defense of European values and for the fact that even in times of full-scale war, we keep our word and develop state institutions. All the necessary decisions are being adopted.
But now, the Hungarian authorities threaten to block negotiations with the EU on Ukraine's accession if its requirements for Ukrainian language legislation are not met. Contrary to the statements of the official Budapest, there is no threat to the language and cultural needs of the Hungarians in Ukraine. On the contrary, the law on national minorities adopted by the Verkhovna Rada in September further expands the opportunities for self-realization of the Hungarians in Ukraine. The only serious threat to the Hungarians of Zakarpattia, as well as to the rest of the citizens of Ukraine, is Russian aggression. However, official Budapest continues to maintain friendly relations with Moscow. The real reason for Budapest's anti-Ukrainian policy is not protecting the interests of the Hungarian community in Ukraine, but cynical attempts to take advantage of the confrontation between Russia and the West. In 2022, the European Parliament announced that Hungary temporarily could not be considered as a functional democracy due to the actions of Viktor Orban and his government, whereas Ukraine is actively implementing reforms and has received the status of a candidate for EU membership According to Johannes Hahn, the European Commissioner for Budget and Administration, Budapest will not be able to constantly blackmail the EU with a veto, since the European Commission has a mechanism for adopting the necessary decisions without Hungary. The G7 foreign ministers are meeting in Tokyo. According to Annalena Baerbock, the head of the German Foreign Ministry, support for Ukraine is a priority topic on the agenda of the G7 meeting. Baerbock said that there is an unbelievable price at stake. If the world loses enthusiasm for supporting Ukraine now, Putin will ruthlessly exploit this, with horrific consequences for people in Ukraine and Europe. Other players in other parts of the world will also draw the wrong conclusions from this, which is why it is so important that the G7 continues strong and comprehensive support for Ukraine. At the same time, Japanese Foreign Minister Yoko Kamikawa stated that the escalation of the conflict in the Middle East would not weaken the support of the G7 for Ukraine.
Stopping Russian invasion of Ukraine swiftly remains a priority for the G7, and we will support Ukraine in all aspects, including diplomatic, humanitarian, financial and security for as long as necessary.
She also emphasized that Japan will continue to expand sanctions against Russia and talked about Tokyo's initiatives to support the recovery of Ukraine. In particular, the aid package was $7.6 billion and the Japanese-Ukrainian conference on the reconstruction of Ukraine, planned for the beginning of the next year. Also, all foreign ministers of G7 confirmed their determination to increase sanctions pressure on Russia and continue to support Ukraine. This is stated in the message of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan presiding over the meeting. The countries, together with international partners, will also continue to promote the Ukrainian peace formula and increase assistance to Ukraine in the reconstruction and recovery.
As we are seeing in incidents in the South China Sea and East China Sea, as well as the situation in Gaza and in southern Israel, and of course Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine, we live in a volatile world.
All the ministers criticized Russia's destruction of Ukraine's grain export infrastructure during the invasion, as well as Moscow's decision in July to unilaterally end its participation in a deal that allowed Ukraine, as a main grain exporter, to resume food supplies via the Black Sea. And now, the G7 countries have joined forces to strengthen Ukraine's air defense because with the onset of the cold, Russian attacks on critical infrastructure will intensify. Ukraine needs more Patriot, IRIS-T NASAMS systems to protect its territory. The optimal solution is the long term is to launch our own production of air defense systems in cooperation with foreign partners. That concludes our today's video. Thank you for watching and stay updated. Subscribe to our UATV channel for more news from Ukraine. Your support is that really matters. Goodbye.